Oh, Yerachmiel's here. Yerachmiel. Welcome. What's your step?
The second too late.
Welcome all. For those of us on digital, watching afterwards. And Yerachmiel, how's it? Okay, well, on page 19b3. Welcome back. We've kept your seat warm. Not just this week, all weeks. 19b3. You got that?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it what?
No.
It's warming up.
I was happy with it.
It's okay.
I'm
Rav Asi, I'm Rav Yochanan. We're now discussing the laws of Ma'aser Sheni, which, as we've been discussing over the last few weeks, this is the produce that one takes to Yerushalayim to eat it in Yerushalayim, which thereby makes everything else considered holy, so to speak. So Ma'aser Sheni, 19b3, bottom right-hand corner. Ma'aser Sheni.
Yeah, I haven't done.
Ma'aser Sheni me'masei chayavim alav. When do we become liable for the eating of Ma'aser Sheni out of Yerushalayim? In other words, if you were to take it out, from what moment, at what point does it become holy? I think what he means is because normally you can redeem. So because normally you can redeem, therefore, if you choose not to bring it with you, because you can't schlep your oranges and your apples with you can always redeem it. But what happens if you took it with you, but now you want to turn back? Or you took it with you and now you want to sell it, right? And at some point in time, it's going to be locked in, and that becomes the holy fruit. That's the question. At what point in time are we liable to Makkos for eating it outside of Yerushalayim because you had to specifically eat those fruits in Yerushalayim? Says the Gemora, Mishra'a Pnei Achayma. Once you saw the wall of Yerushalayim, that's considered entering the city. The point is Pnei Hachayim. That means you haven't walked through the city yet. You've seen the face of the wall, and it's already considered walking through the city.
It's not crossing the threshold.
Exactly. Over the line. Look at footnote 27.
Is it really cold in there?
No, it's settling down. I don't think about anything. There it goes. Now just stopped. So it is from when the Ma'aser Sheni has seen the face of the wall of Yerushalayim, that is, from when it has entered the city, but then leaves the city and one eats it outside, he incurs Makkos. But if it never entered the city, it does not incur Makkos. 27.
Your pure intention was
If somebody offered you a deal, maybe. Or another reason, let's just read the footnote for a second, I'll come back with another reason. When the Mishnah states that Makkos is incurred by one who eats Ma'aser Sheni outside the wall of Yerushalayim, it refers to a case where the Ma'aser Sheni has been brought in and then removed. Although there is no Makkos if one eats Ma'aser Sheni before it has entered Yerushalayim. Although there is no Makkos if one eats Ma'aser Sheni before it has entered Yerushalayim, the Makkos, it is prohibited by force of a positive commandment. Since the Torah commands that Ma'aser Sheni, which cannot be brought to Yerushalayim, should be redeemed, and the money brought to Yerushalayim. So in other words, if you eat it without redeeming it, what do you transgress before it comes to Yerushalayim? If you eat it before redeeming it, you've transgressed a positive commandment. What's the positive commandment? Positive commandment says, if you can't bring the fruit to Yerushalayim, redeem it and buy new fruits. That's what the positive commandment says. If you went ahead and ate the Ma'aser Sheni without redeeming it, What have you transgressed? You transgressed a positive commandment. To give you an example of what a positive commandment means, putting on tefillin is a positive commandment. If you haven't put on tefillin, you haven't transgressed a negative commandment. You've transgressed what we call a positive commandment. Fail to observe. Fail to observe a mitzvah. Exactly. It's still considered a problem. It's different to tzitzit, by the way. Tzitzit says, it's a different terminology. Tzitzit says, if you wear a garment of 4 corners, you must wear tzitzit. So what happens if I don't wear a garment of 4 corners? And there's no mitzvah to wear tzitzit. So the rabbis are the ones that asked us to wear tzitzit on a regular basis. So that means to force ourselves to wear the garment of 4 corners and thereby have the tzitzit connected. That's the rabbis asked of us. But biblically speaking, the mitzvah was only if you wear a garment of 4 corners, you therefore have to wear tzitzit. Whereas tefillin, on the other hand, is a commandment outright. Everybody has to wear tefillin. If you don't wear the tefillin, you have transgressed, use that terminology, on a positive commandment. So same thing over here. If you ate the Ma'aser Sheni, you've transgressed a positive commandment, which said that you need to redeem the fruits that you aren't going to bring into Yerushalayim. So, once you...
Is it not by someone that regularly goes and eats his fruit? Is it not the same thing? It's in the same way that if you don't put on tefillin, then you fail to take the opportunity of doing a positive commandment.
Right, so therefore, someone
that takes their fruits that only takes its fruit to Jerusalem,
right, and then
failed to fulfill
that mitzvah.
Of the
no, because that mitzvah of redeeming will be compared to divorce. So divorce is one of the 630 commandments, but most people don't divorce, which means that they don't fulfill the mitzvah of gittin. So in fact, we don't have 613 commandments. The person who's married only has 612 commandments. And then you have to deduct Kohanim's rules and Leviim's rules and Bet HaMikdash rules and others. So you end up only having to fulfill much less than 613. In the times of the Bet HaMikdash, you'll have more because then there's the Bet HaMikdash and then there's Kohanim and then there's Leviim. But certain mitzvahs you don't have to do. So Hilda say, what about the commandment that says you have to redeem the Ma'aser Sheni fruits? It's only an if. If you don't want to bring it, then you have a mitzvah of redeeming it. But you can choose not to. And then you're not obligated.
You have to have one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying the mitzvah of redeeming you may never do in your life because you'll continuously bring it to Yerushalayim. That's the way that's the way you'll. It seems like it's a separate mitzvah of redeeming. Redeeming stands on its own. That he brings that quote here that Ma'aser Sheni that cannot be brought to Yerushalayim should be redeemed. That means you could go your whole life not ever having performed that mitzvah.
But the redemption is there in case you can't make
That's
it.
That's the point. Yeah. By the way, the same thing applies to a bris. Someone who has no. Interesting. Who the mitzvah of the bris is on. Father. There's a whole machloket in the Gemara about whether the father's obligated or the person is obligated. Of a bris milah, who's obligated. But Peter Nabed, the father's.
You mean
the baby? The baby. Because the baby can't do it in 8 days, but let's say the father never did it.
And it's on there.
Then it's on the child as the child gets older to circumcise himself. So that's an interesting one because who has the mitzvah of brit? Right? If you say it's a baby, if it's a father, the father never did it, why must the child do it? And if you say it's a child, well then why is the father doing it? So what happens is it's actually the child, but the father does it on behalf of his child.
Yeah, I've been supposed to do on behalf of the child until 13 anyway.
You mean all mitzvahs?
Yeah.
Which you take your spot about out of chinuch. You're educating a child, exactly. It's interesting. It says it's one of the reasons why you have a su'udas mitzvah, a meal at a bris. The bala simcha, the baby is barely ever there. It's barely there. The mother and the baby barely have a chance to come down to the suda. So the question's asked, then why have a whole fancy suda? Right, and then you have a whole fancy benching of harachamons. There's a whole bunch of harachamons that we say at the time of a bris. If the baby's not there, why do you need a soda? So one of the beautiful answers is it's actually a soda for the father. The father who was obligated in his own bris never partook the word in his own soda. he was never there. So when he does his son's bris, he's almost celebrating his own. And he's saying, how do I know that I was in favor of what my parents did to me? Is when I choose to do it for my child, I'm now celebrating my bris. The Bala Simcha really is the father, not just for the baby's bris, which he wasn't obligated in. Okay, anyway, the Gemara discusses who is obligated. Comes to Pidyon Ben, redeeming the firstborn child. If you never had a firstborn, then you don't have the mitzvah. That ties into your point. So another mitzvah that you may never perform. I'm the firstborn, so my parents had the mitzvah of Pidyon Ben, and my daughter's firstborn, so I never had the mitzvah. Right? And if it's not Peterechem, if it's not natural, and it's a C-section, then also won't apply. And if you're a Levim and Kohanim, also won't apply. So, as we can see, there's many mitzvahs that actually are not necessarily observed by everybody. Oh, yeah. I'll address it in a second, yeah? Oh, that's the interesting point. Just seeing the walls, you're already in.
What distance?
So Evan's saying, well, if seeing the walls is considered in Yerushalayim, then can you eat the fruits there too? Sorry, that's a paradox. How could you say that? Inside the wall.
So then is seeing the walls being inside?
That's what Evan's saying. If seeing the wall is considered being inside the wall, then why can't I eat the fruit here?
Yeah.
No, I think once you see the walls, you're now obligated to walk towards the walls.
Yeah, I think it's the point.
And walk through the walls.
Yeah. What is redemption? When can you not redeem?
That's what we're saying.
Yeah,
that's what we're saying. So once you see the walls, you can't redeem anymore. You must walk forward. Yeah. Maybe the explanation is like this: is first of all, once the fruit has seen the walls of Yerushalayim, there must be some sort of spiritual kedusha and sanctity that happens as a result. But now you've got to walk to the walls and eat it within the walls.
But what's the reason for a redemption? What are the options?
Too heavy.
Yeah, but then that makes sense, right? Because now if you've already taken the choice
all the way there,
you're almost there. Then you can't.
Well, remember, you see the walls from everywhere in Yerushalayim. You know, all the mountaintops and everything. Could be still a far distance.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going via foot, could still be a far distance. But it seems like the walls carry some level of sanctity.
But it's if you're going down to the sea on holiday and you see the sea,
then you know you're there. You know you're there.
Distance away, and you actually can't go on any further. Now it's too late to redeem the fruit.
That's what we're saying. Once you're there, let's see now. So my timer. Bottom line, last line of the page. What is the reason that Makkos is only incurred once you enter Yerushalayim? In other words, if you eat it, this is what we said before in the footnote. If you eat it before you get to Yerushalayim, it means you ate it inappropriately. There's no Makkos. You transgress a positive commandment.
You're hungry.
But this fruit has to be eaten in Yerushalayim. So if you eat this fruit has to be eaten in Yerushalayim,
you're going to collapse.
So if bad luck, go buy another juice along the side of the road. You can't eat this fruit. So if you ate it before you got to Yerushalayim, we said you transgress a positive commandment and you don't get Makkos. But if you eat it when you see Yerushalayim already, once it's seen Yerushalayim, now there's Makkos. So the Gemara is asking, why now does Makkos lashes kick in? No. Once you finish, you finish. So look at this. The pasuk says, before Hashem your God, you shall eat it. That's a positive commandment of eat it in Yerushalayim. And it says,
Could you be Yotze and part of it?
What explain that?
That's so you sell it for money and you take the money.
Oh, we said part of the money. So you take some with you and you sell some.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we discussed that a few weeks ago. I seem to think it would be permissible to take some of the fruit with you, eat some of the fruit, redeem some of the fruit. Then you have some. Not at this point. Not once you've seen the walls, right? But back at home, if you chose to redeem some of it and to take some of it, I think that would be okay.
You got in mind what you need.
But it's not. Yeah, but if you can't carry the entire amount, then redeem some and take that money to Yerushalayim to eat it there.
In what way is the positive commandment relevant as opposed to negative commandment?
So we're about to discuss this now more in depth. But the point is that there's two parts to this prohibition, two parts to the problem. There's a positive commandment that's relevant, and there's a negative commandment that's relevant. When you transgress a positive commandment, we never give lashes. You only get lashes if you transgress a negative commandment. And therefore, what we have to understand is what is wrong with eating Ma'aser Sheni at home. What's wrong with eating Ma'aser Sheni at home is that you've transgressed a positive commandment, which says if you can't take your fruit with you, redeem it. You didn't redeem it, so you've transgressed a positive commandment. Now, but when it comes to Yerushalayim, and the fruits have already seen the walls of Yerushalayim, that's what the Gemara is explaining now. Suddenly, a negative commandment kicks in, which never was relevant until now. Suddenly, a negative commandment kicks in, and now, if you transgress this negative commandment, that comes along with lashes. Makkos. So, what is that negative commandment? So, we're saying like this: Amakra, the pasuk says, you should eat the fruits in Yerushalayim. Ochsev, it says, you may not eat it back at home. Interesting. Here you have a negative commandment. You may not eat it back at home. Okay, let's see. Kol heicha, the juxtaposition of these two verses. Kol heicha de korinam be'lifnei Hashem elokech techalenu. Wherever it applies, the one verse that says that wherever before Hashem you shall eat it. Korinam be lo suchal lechol b'sharecha. We apply the verse that says you may not eat it in their outlying cities. In other words, not everywhere. Okay, let me finish the paragraph. And wherever we don't apply the rule of eating it in front of Hashem, we don't apply the verse that speaks about eating it in the outlying cities. Let me explain this point. One second. Let me explain this point. So there's two verses close to one another. One says that you have to eat it in Yerushalayim. The other one says you can't eat it back at home. What the Gemara is saying, which is quite a novel idea, is that the prohibition about eating it at home is connected to the pasuk that speaks about eating it in Yerushalayim. In other words, only when Yerushalayim applies, when the mitzvah of eating it in Yerushalayim applies, do you then have a prohibition about eating it at home? When you don't have a mitzvah to eat it in Yerushalayim, then you don't have a prohibition about eating it at home. So, for example, your fruits that are sitting in your farm back at home, do you have to eat them in Yerushalayim? What's the alternative? Redeem them. Exactly. So these fruits don't have to be eaten in Yerushalayim because you can redeem them if you want to. So is there going to be a prohibition about eating it at home? No, because they weren't holy. They haven't become holy to the point you have to take them to Jerusalem. Right. So let's just finish this thought process. I think it's quite novel, but nonetheless, this is what the Gemara is suggesting: is that because the fruits are at home, you have no obligation to take it to Yerushalayim because you may redeem it. If that's the case, there's no prohibition about eating it there. When I say prohibition, negative commandment about eating it there. Only once the fruits become Jerusalem holy. Once they become eligible to be eaten in Yerushalayim, does the other prohibition kick in, and you can't eat it outside the Yerushalayim? So therefore, if my fruits are sitting at home in my farm, and I haven't taken them to Yerushalayim yet, and I could still redeem them, there's no prohibition about eating them in Yerushalayim, eating them at home. Now, what's Evan saying? Evan's saying, why are we so absolute about this? What's your question?
Isn't that statement they just said dependent on whether you choose to redeem or not? You have these fruits, first fruits, and before they redeem they are Jerusalem.
They should be how? They should be holy before you redeem them, even when they're sitting at home. That's the debate. So Evan's saying if you choose not to redeem them, and that means you intend to eventually eat them in Yerushalayim, do they not become holy from that moment that you have them at home? You're arguing what the Gemara says. No, until they see the walls of Jerusalem, they're not holy. Exactly. So that's the discussion. But because as long as you have the potential to redeem, they're not considered holy yet.
Now, if you've redeemed them, the money that you get for redemption, when does that become? Do you have to spend that in
Jerusalem, inside the wall?
So that's immediately is holy.
Yeah.
No, but then why isn't the fruit also immediately holy?
Okay, good question. So once you redeem,
that money is immediately.
Well, first of all, not necessarily. It's the value of the money. So I don't think that same coin or note has to be spent. Not that one. That's not that specific note or coin. Same idea. So you can take another coin, another note, and once you get there, then it becomes gold.
Can you redeem the food after you've eaten it?
Well, hold on. That was your question.
Someone
But
said,
then it's finished. Too late. Retroactively.
Yeah. Because
It's not an apple.
It's done. There's nothing left. No.
You still
In the end, it's right.
which is
Exactly. It's the value. The Rebbe needs to hold on to it. He needs to keep it. Exactly.
You give it
The value of it. Yeah. So the money. So the same thing applies to the fruits. So that's the novel idea. Is that as the fruit is in your possession back at home, there's no negative commandment. And that explains Gemara's question. Why is it that lashes kicks in only when you get to Yerushalayim? Why were there no lashes earlier? And the answer is because earlier there was no negative commandment. Earlier there was only a positive commandment that said, if you don't want to eat it, redeem it. That's what you transgressed. There was never a negative commandment. The negative commandment is linked. And I would say this is, in a way, this is how, like who said, the way we're interpreting this today is rabbinic tradition. The fact that these two verses are connected, that it arrives to Jerusalem and then you can't eat it outside the walls.
It's not a Rabbi Ishmael.
No, it's not one of them. It's called a hekesh. Out of the hekesh is not one of them. Hekesh means juxtaposition. When two verses are close to one another, you can learn one out from the other. That we just did now.
You have to either redeem or things. I mean, the fruit is destined for one of the two.
Sure.
So if you've eaten it, you've broken both immediately.
If you ate the
Because you can't take it to
home,
Jerusalem and you can't. Yeah, but if you've eaten it at home, you now can't take it to Jerusalem and you can't redeem it. So
yeah, but there aren't. Oh, I see. Because
now you haven't got any fruit left to do what you have.
One verse said that you should take it to Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
And you now can't eat it in Yerushalayim.
Yeah, because you can't eat in Jerusalem because you've eaten it.
Okay, but 1 second.
And you also can't.
No, so I would say there's two positive commandments you transgressed, not two negative commandments. One positive commandment is it says you must eat the fruit in Yerushalayim, and you didn't. So you transgressed that one positive commandment.
Okay.
You also, it's like the tefillin example. It said you should eat the fruit in Yerushalayim, and you didn't eat it in Yerushalayim. You ate it before. And also you transgressed when it says, if you're not going to eat it in Yerushalayim, what should you do? Redeem it. And you didn't redeem it either. So I would say there's two positive commandments that you transgress by eating it at home. There's no negative commandments. The only negative commandment is this one: don't eat it outside your walls or outside in your city. And what the Gemara is saying is that doesn't apply everywhere. That only applies once the fruits are Jerusalem. What do we call them? Jerusalem eligible or holy, bound. Jerusalem bound. Yeah. If they're not Jerusalem bound, then there's no negative commandments kicking in yet.
Okay, so you've done something wrong, but there's no Makkos.
Exactly. That's what we're saying.
You have to buy Jerusalem produce. Say you're on the way to Jerusalem and you hop in, you walk past the orange.
No. It has to be in Yerushalayim, the produce.
And so if you go to
Fruit.
buy them and sell, you have to-
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, the right-hand column, Mesve. So now now that we debated that, now we're going to question this. This is Rabbi Yochanan's statement. Mesve. Rabbi Yossi says, Kohen shall also be odo te'ena shel tevel. A Kohen who picks up in his hand a fig, a te'ena of tevel. And tevel means that we don't know what it is and whether the tithe has been removed or not. 30. Sorry. He says, we're not designated. Look at 30. I.e. a fig whose chumas and maasrus, the tithing, we're not designated and which is thus forbidden even to a kohen. So even a kohen can't eat of it because the appropriate allocations of fruit haven't been removed from it yet. Let's read the brackets here. Since the Bryson later imposes Makkos for eating the fig, while yet untithed, it implies that figs are subject to a biblical tithing requirement. This supports the view of the Rambam, who asserts that all edible fruits, but not vegetables, are biblically subject to chumas and maasrus. Chumas is the allocation to the kohen. Maasrus is what we discussed previously, the poor man or the Levite or Mesa Sheni. Others, however, maintain that these requirements apply biblically only to the 5 species of grain, as well as to grapes and olives, whereas other produce is only rabbinically obligated in Truma and Maasrus. Interesting. He writes in another paragraph, others propound a third view that all the 7 species of Israel, one of which is the fig, are biblically obligated in Trumas and Maasrus, which makes sense over here as well. Because if you're walking through apples and oranges, for example, apples and oranges would seem like it's rabbinical.
According to this.
Well, there's 3 opinions. The Rambam says all fruits. The second opinion says the 5 grains and olives and figs. Olives and grapes and olives. So not figs. Figs would be rabbinical. And the third opinion says all 7 species of Israel, but everything else is rabbinical. Right? Interesting. Okay. So now let's get back to this. This kohen passes by, and the kohen gets a fig of tevel, meaning it hasn't been removed. So not the meiser has been taken off, and not the truma for the kohen has been taken off, and now the kohen comes and wants to eat of this. Right? We're not allowing him to. So he said like this. Te'ena zu trumasa bu'uksa. So this fig that I'm holding, I want the stem to be considered the truma allocation. Interesting. The stem should be allocated truma. Ma'aser rishon mitzvoina, when it says the first tithe, ma'aser rishon, which is given to the Levite, that should be the northern part of the fruit. But ma'aser sheni, one fig. I don't know how he's going to divide up all this whole fig. But ma'aser sheni ledroma, and the ma'aser sheni for Yerushalayim should come from the southern part of the fruit. Okay. V'hishnas ma'aser sheni v'hu b'Yerushalayim. It was the year of ma'aser sheni, because as we discussed, right, some years are the poor man, and some years are the ma'aser sheni. So it was Ma'aser Sheni, and he was in Yerushalayim, so he could eat Ma'aser Sheni there. Oy Ma'aser Ani, or was the poor man's tithe, v'hu b'gvulin, and he was outside of Jerusalem, where Ma'aser Ani can be eaten. Look at footnote 32. Well, footnote 31 says the designation of Truma and Ma'aser is not valid unless each portion is clearly identified. Thus, the Truma, Ma'aser Rishon, and Ma'aser Sheni must each be assigned a specific part of the fig, which is what he's doing. He's saying the split stem is one, the top is one, the bottom is another. 32 says, in the first, second, fourth, and fifth. We learned this last time. Years of the Shemitah cycle, the second tithe, Ma'aser Sheni, separated from the crop is Ma'aser Sheni, which remains the owners but must be eaten in Jerusalem. In the third and sixth years of the Shemitah cycle, Ma'aser Sheni is replaced by Ma'aser Ani, which is given to paupers and may be eaten everywhere and anywhere. So the Levite, the Levi, always gets. What changes is Jerusalem and the poor man. Okay, now. How's he eating? How's he going to eat Ma'aser Rishon? That's my question. Can a kohen, Truma is the stem, he can eat Truma. Ma'aser Sheni, he can eat Ma'aser, everyone can eat Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim. But Ma'aser Rishon, how's he eating Ma'aser Rishon? Ma'aser Rishon is the portion you give to a Levi.
It's the first portion you take off.
What? Oh, I don't know if he's giving it to the Levi. It seems like he's eating the whole thing
What he's
himself.
saying, the coin is technically part of the tribe of the
That's what I'm thinking, but I don't think that's true. Hold on.
Any time period to get all the fruit, whatever to your commission.
So discuss the time of it.
Then
Should
you,
we said 2 years? Second and fourth year. Yeah, third and fifth. Like 7-year cycle.
Interesting. It says like this: Ma'aser Ani. You'll see now in the next paragraph, but just to summarize, Ma'aser Ani you have to give to a poor man, but who can eat of it? Anybody can eat of it. The mitzvah is to designate it to a poor man, but everybody can eat of it. Ma'aser Rishon, which goes to the first Ma'aser, which goes to a Levite, it goes to a Levi, but everybody can eat of it. It's not just the Levite that has to eat it. He gets it as a gift. But anybody that wants to partake can partake.
He gives it away.
Yeah, all right. So good point. So let's see how that fits in. Ma'aser Sheni also same idea. If you bring your fruits to Yerushalayim, others can eat it there too. As you're saying, if the owner gives it away, that's the story here. Let's see here. So now, let's try to unpack this. So over the page. So if he ate it, he ate the whole thing, right? He ate the whole thing now. Over the page. Lo ka'achas. He's going to get one set of lashes. What's the lashes? Because you ate tevel.
Talk about it for him.
Yeah. You ate tevel, because you'll see the next line speaks about a non-clay. What's tevel? Tevel means unresolved fruit. You ate unresolved fruit. Looking for no one. Okay, this does get a little bit technical here, so hold on tight. Let's see how we go. As long as Trumas Ma'aser, what's Trumas Ma'aser? Trumas Ma'aser means that when you give the kohen Truma, Trumas Meiser. When you give the Kohen Truma, he must allocate a tithe to the Levite. That's the rule. Every Kohen has to support the Levite too. Every Yisrael, every regular farmer has to help the Kohen and the Levite. The Kohen that you give extra fruit to, the Kohen has to help the Levite too. Trumas Meiser. As it's the Meiser of the Truma, in addition to the regular Meiser that they get. Truma goes to the Kohen, and off the Truma you give the Meiser. So he did not designate anything to the Levite. Now, the Meiser Rishon portion remains in the category of Tevel, and he thus incurs Makkos for eating it.
Why would one not then tithe?
No. So first of all, because you got one fruit and you're hungry, so you're trying to find a way how to allow yourself to eat this one fruit. As you're coming up with all sorts of original ways of thinking to allocate all areas of allocation to you, to allow you to eat the fruit.
But it's only if you don't know whether it's.
No, in this case you knew, or Tevel, sorry, Demai means you're not sure.
Yeah.
Tevel means you're certain that nothing's been tied properly.
Oh, okay.
That's a Tevel. Demai means you're unsure. Tevel means you're certain. I'll come back to the first sentence in a second. He does not, however, incur an additional Makkos penalty for eating the Truma portion. That was a stem. Since he is a Kohen to whom Truma is permitted. So Truma is not a problem because he's a Kohen. He can eat the stem because it's Truma. He also does not incur Makkos for eating that which is designated as Meiser Rishon and Meiser Sheni or Meiser Ani. So all the tithing, he's got no problem eating. Since these are foods that are permitted to all Jews. Now, they're permitted to all Jews, but where's the Levite to give it to him? The Levite didn't allocate it to him. Though one is commanded to give Meiser Rishon to a Levi and Meiser Ani to a pauper, they may be consumed by anyone. What's the point? Also, because if he allocates it, then they can partake. Craig saying here is the Kohen never gave it to Levi. So surely that's wrong. How can you say this is the Levite's fruit and then I'm going to enjoy it? Then let's see.
Because in order to give Makkos, you would need to witness it. No.
The fact that he ate of it.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is done in public.
Correct.
And that means that there's aid in there. Sounds like, right? Everyone's hearing this.
Yeah.
But then the question is, if that's the case,
Because you go to such lengths, you're not going to get Truma. You're publicly do it, but you do need a good reason.
yeah, exactly.
Compared to a bad beating.
So,
Compared to a bad beating.
You know the difference between a good beating and a bad beating. You give a good beating, you get a bad beating.
Sure. So here's the point. If I don't, maybe I can say the following. If I don't hand over the Meiser to a Levite, in other words, if I declare that this is Meiser Rishon, but it never reaches the hand of the Levi, and I eat it instead, do I get lashes? Maybe not. Maybe, because remember, but now I'm going to eat it. But remember, everyone's allowed to eat of the Levite's fruit as long as he allocated it.
The question is, if you say it's going to go to the Levite and the Levite then gives you the permission to eat it, even if he hasn't received it, then you're allowed to, even if it hasn't gone through the process. Yeah. Doesn't have to.
If you
touch
gave it to a pauper and the pauper shared it, then others can partake of it. But it seems like he has to give permission.
There's no they're like, but you have to actually physically have possession of it. Or can the person go to the point, listen, I can't speak. Portion of it is for the permission, can I hear it myself? Is that sufficient?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because if you just had this figure in the crowd, nobody's going to know. There has to be a public component to it.
So let's assume it was publicly announced. Oh, you see, people heard it. Oh, and of course, people heard it. It became like public property already. Any Levite could have come forward to take it. The fact that the Levites didn't come forward is that your fault. And then you went ahead and ate of it. Okay.
I don't understand one thing. There are only two types. Master Rishon, Master Shady.
And Maisa Ani.
No, Master Ani is replaced
Yes.
only
Of Maisa.
by Shady,
That's right.
never by
Levite. Correct.
That one always does.
So right.
The only one that
Shady and Ani will interchange.
will interchange is okay.
Yeah.
Master Shady.
Shady and Ani will interchange.
So 3 and 6.
Yeah. Third and sixth year. Third and sixth year.
Yeah, it's 6 years.
Exactly. Okay, so we have to assume that he's announced this in public. So it seems like he's announced it in public. The fact that he ate it first before the Levite had a chance to get to it. And remember, how much did he allocate? The northern side of his fig, whatever that means. And the fact that he ate it of the Levite's property is okay. So why does he get lashes? He gets lashes because he never designated something called the Trumas Meiser. And the Trumas Meiser, I'm sorry, I got it the wrong way around. Trumas Meiser means that the other way around, not the Kohen gives to the Levite. The Levite must give to the Kohen as well. So Yisrael gives Truma to a Kohen, and Levite gives from his Meiser, he gives to the Kohen.
It makes more sense because they're
vice versa.
Right.
The vice versa. The Levite has to give. That's Trumas Meiser. It's the Truma from the Meiser of the Levite. So here's the thing. When this guy designated the Levite's tithe, it's very nice, but nobody gave from the Levite's tithe to the Kohen, which is himself, by the way.
That's the onus of the
Levite. But had it been done? Not the onus of the Levite. This fruit, you can't touch it until the truma has been removed from it. So we're catching him out on a technicality. Nobody gave the Kohen a contribution from the Levite's portion called Trumas Meiser. Nobody gave the Kohen the allocation. The irony here is that he's the Kohen. But still, nobody called it Trumas Meiser. You see at the bottom of footnote 1, he says an interesting thing. After the square brackets. If he had even designated, listen to the scenario here. If he had even designated, but not separated the Trumas Meiser, e.g. by saying, if he would have said, let its Trumas Meiser be in its center, that means he would have called the center of the fruit Trumas Meiser, the allocation from the Levite's portion to the Kohen. He will not eat Gemora Makkos at all, since Trumas Meiser is permitted to a Kohen, so he could eat of it as well. But because nobody called it Trumas Meiser, nobody called it allocation, it's missing. And because it's missing, it's called Tevel. And if it's Tevel, you can't eat of Tevel. Tevel means unresolved fruit. Tevel means until every allocation has been allocated correctly, it's unresolved. So we're catching him out on a very small detail here. We're catching him out, and he gets lashes for it, on the fact that nobody allocated from the Levite portion, nobody allocated the Trumas Meiser to the Kohen. Interesting scenario. So for eating the poor man's fruit, nothing wrong. For eating the Levite's portion, nothing wrong. For eating the Truma, you're a Kohen, you can do what you like. But because nobody came along and designated what's called Trumas Meiser, the allocation for the Kohen from the Levi's tithe, you missed you haven't properly redeemed or you haven't properly solved the issue, it remains tevel, and therefore you receive lashes. That's one scenario.
Is this a negative commandment?
Okay, so the Gemara is saying here, we're going to find the verse. The Gemara is saying here that tevel is a negative commandment. One who eats unresolved fruit has transgressed the Torah prohibition.
A negative.
A negative prohibition, yeah. But we'd like to find the verse. We haven't come across that pasuk yet, of where it says that if you ate, but he does say here, he incurs 1 Makkos penalty for eating tevel. It seems like there's a prohibition. I don't have the pasuk in front of us, and it seems like there's a prohibition for eating tevel, unresolved fruit. Okay, let's go to the next. We're on the second line of the paragraph. Zar sha'achal. What about someone who's not a Kohen? So this is right, second line of the first paragraph. What about a foreigner who's not a Kohen? And he now eats of the same fig. It makes the same announcements. This is this, this is that, this is this. Allocates the whole fig, with his contributions. He gets stein, 2 penalties of lashes, 2 times lashes. Which, by the way, will never happen because you can never give someone 39 times 2. It's almost like a prison sentence where you say you get 2 life sentences in prison. Concurrently. So you never get a both. So do here. If you deserve 2 rounds of lashes, then you get 1, practically, yeah. So why do you get 2? 1 for eating tevel, because it's not resolved properly, and 1 for eating the truma that was the base of the fig. Did you see? Why?
I'm not just going back to the previous. It does give the. See,
Yeah, the one. Oh, here. Oh,
so I just went to the previous page where it references it.
Previous.
Yeah.
Previous. The mystery.
Yes.
Here you found the verse. But how do you find that?
Because it says refer to such and such a footnote in such and such.
Okay. Well. Okay. Achal tevel. That's actually part of the Mishnah. Achal tevel. If you ate tevel. So Rashi says, the footnote says, the Torah warns against eating tevel in the verse of Leviticus. They shall not profane sacred foods of the children of Israel. That which they will separate for Hashem. The future tense, Asher Yaribu, which they will separate, indicates that the present sanctity of these foods derives from the portions that will be separated from them. The verse thus refers to teva, produce, whose truma or other ties has not yet been taken from it. There's a prohibition there. Interesting. That's very helpful. Okay, thank you. Yeah, good job with that one. Okay, fine. So teva, we know there's a prohibition. Let's go back to this. So now let's go back to this foreigner here. This foreigner transgresses 2 problems. Number 1, tevel. Number 2, truma. Why is truma a second word?
Truma only can be about
Stands on its own.
isn't truma for the Kohen.
Yeah.
So
But I would have thought that tevel is it sounds like there's 2 issues. It sounds like tevel is, the definition of tevel is unresolved fruit. It sounds like the unresolved fruit of tevel is specifically talking about tithing, meiser, because here we're saying that the truma aspect creates a whole new reason for Makkos. So what happened here? The Kohen declared the aspects of the fruit. Then the foreigner came along and ate of it. And what are we saying to the foreigner? You've now transgressed 2. Number 1, you've transgressed tevel, which is unresolved fruit from tithing, because you ate. Why are you transgressing that? Oh, because the trumas meiser, the allocation for the kohen, hadn't been allocated. So you transgressed tevel. And number 2, you ate of the actual truma, which the kohen designated, and you can't eat of truma. So because of that, you're going to get 2 times lashes. If you look at we'll just finish off the last point, and we'll discuss it in a second. Because if you ate it if you ate it without the kohen making all these announcements, so you just found this random fruit, without the Kohen making all these announcements, and you ate of it, what would he get? He would only get one round of lashes. Why? Because the fruit is unresolved fruit, so you get one round of lashes for that. But because the Kohen made all these announcements around this fruit and allocated part of the fruit as truma, now you're getting two. Now you're getting two problems. You're getting one problem is it's been unresolved, and the other issue is you're getting the truma aspect that you can't touch.
Yeah, whereas the Kohen only gets the unresolved.
Unresolved teva.
Exactly.
So we're assuming, right, you would need. We're assuming this is not publicly. I mean, okay, we haven't looked at the commentaries, but we have to say, basically, I mean, Craig was saying, like, there's no Levi allowing him to eat of this. Surely he had to make this announcement. And if a lady wanted to come forward, a lady can come forward. No lady came forward, then he can eat it. Then he can eat it. That's what it seems like. So it just shows you, first of all, just shows you on a practical level, what do we take away from this practically before we wrap up? Is that when we travel to Israel today, how careful we need to be with trumot and masrot of fruits. So today it's not necessarily biblical. I don't think today it's biblical because there's no temple. It's almost certain that the biblical commandment of tithing is dependent on the temple, on the Beis Hamikdash. The fact that we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, I think, takes away the biblical aspect of it. But it's at least rabbinical today to give trumot and masrot of our produce, which means that we got to be careful. Which is why going to a fruit store in Israel is more complicated than going to a fruit store here in Johannesburg. And people think to themselves, well, what's the big deal? It's all kosher, fruit's kosher. If fruit's kosher, then why don't you need a hechsher on the fruit store? And the answer is this: in Johannesburg, you don't need a hechsher because you don't need truvas and maasros. But in Israel, you need truvas and maasros. You have to ask the fruit store, where's your hechsher? Who's responsible for taking off truvas and maasros? I remember going to stores, like a fruit store or something, because the major cities is one thing, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Bnei Brak, they normally have. Even Tel Aviv, we normally have. But if you go to the small places, like Kiryat Gat or, I don't know, anywhere you're traveling, these small villages don't necessarily pay the fees of having like a certificate or a hechsher. So when you walk in, you have to ask the owner, like, who's responsible? Who takes off your truma off your produce? So often they'll say the Rav Shechuna, the Rav of the neighborhood comes by our shop and he takes it off. Okay, so you have to trust him, or it's your choice. If you want to trust him or not. But just to assume it's all okay, it's problematic.
No, I looked at fruit to all.
So you saw so fruits. Well, he says they're not vegetables.
No, depends on number 1, 2, 3.
No, but even the first one said all fruits but not vegetables.
What about like
They were talking the 7 grains as well.
And the grains are included. Grains are included. So I told you that story once when Pick and Pay bought fruits from Israel, and Rabbi Mokan got a shock of his life because they brought it just after a Shemitah. And normally the base doesn't keep an eye out for what fruits is Pick and Pay selling. It's generally okay. But suddenly there was like a alarm that went out that they just imported fruit from Israel, and now they're selling fruits in Pick and Pay that hasn't been, which is teva. So again, is it called a biblical transgression? Today, maybe it's less because it's rabbinical, but still it's treated the same. So I remember that with the panic, they had to run to Pick and Pay and speak to the managers, and they put up a sign to say, fruits from Israel. I don't know if they wrote there anything about Truma Maisa. They just had to make it, at least the religious people who are sensitive to this, at least know that there's a problem with the fruits. Even then, you know how sensitive you're going to be? I mean, imagine Pick and Pay putting up a sign, no Meiser and Truma removed. They wouldn't allow for that because nobody's going to buy. So they had to put up a sign, fruits from Israel. At least those who are aware would be careful.
There was a sign at Kosher that actually said fruits from Israel. Truma and Masa has been taken.
Has been taken.
The Kosher
Right.
Is there any sort of allowance for the case if you don't know whether the fruit that you have found we get from Israel from someone else? Or you can say for sure it's come from Israel, therefore it's
Well, you don't know where you're living. You mean when you're in Israel?
So you the shop, you don't know whether
In Israel.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
In case of the bed.
You can assume, I would imagine that most, because you go by Roiv, you go by majority. Here in Johannesburg, you would assume that fruit is not from Israel because most of the fruits are not from Israel. So I would imagine you go by Roiv. Yeah. Oh, I see. If there was a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in this country, you'll see by the price.
And I'm sure it's coming. It should be coming in. I don't know how long after the year does it come in. Now, recently or previous? No, that's after the last sabbatical year. So we're now in the post sabbatical year because we just finished Tishrei last year. We just finished. So, right, we just finished 6 months ago. 6 months ago. It's very hard. But wait till the fruit comes here. I don't know how long it takes for the fruit to come here, but it does. Yeah. So you got pomegranates and other such fruits. You're gonna cause trouble. So Tevel.
About 4 years ago, chickens in Munster. And on the front of it, it said not suitable for Passover.
Oh, really?
Who used the place?
What was it? Egg mats or something?
No, it just had put something on it.
Because it's also, remember that matzah has to be made specifically for.
Mitzvah matzah, yeah.
So I think that is the problem.
Interesting. Okay. So the term that we learned tonight is tevel. Tevel is unresolved fruit. Okay. So that's although truma and meiser are not necessarily practical for us, we don't all remove truma and meiser, but nonetheless, the concept of making sure that our fruits have been removed is something that's really tevel.
As opposed to two.
Okay. Well, let me stop this thing.